Is Everly. Everly is our Asian resident intern, so he's staying in a beautiful cabin there and has
Yes.
been here since May. And has been doing bird surveys every single week on this property since May. There's a lot of other research that was taking place in the summer, but that has continued to take place, be it wind or cold or snow. We don't do the rain because the birds are too quiet, but thank you so much for Everly for their hard work. And also they've been working on the diorama at the basement, so you'll see sort of under construction. That's another big project. But Everly's brought a lot of talent, artistic talent, has brought the bird society back to life, and we're so lucky to have them here at Tin Mountain. So without further ado, bird ecology.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. As Ali said, I'm Everly Aldine. I'm the resident bird intern here at Tin Mountain. And one of the duties for resident bird interns, among taking birds out of nets and doing point counts every week, is the annual winter bird ecology talk pre-Christmas bird count. So I wanted to just kind of do some highlights about general concepts that I learned in college back in Wisconsin, as well as some species-specific New Hampshire birds that you might see on the Christmas bird count. Just a quick little review, as well as some really bad jokes. So please enjoy. So we're going to talk about some challenges that, oh my gosh, look, it's burned on the screen. Challenges that birds have in the winter. I think sometimes thinking like an ecologist can really help you understand how birds adapt to their environment, and may give you a new appreciation for all the hard work they have to do. We get to sit inside when it's nice and warm. They don't get to do that. Some adaptations that birds have evolved in response to winter, and finally, some local bird species. So first, I wanted to start off by creating this really abstract idea of like how winter affects birds. So as I've listed on the left there's a couple of things that happen, right? So food availability is one of the things I wanted to emphasize. I think it's really interesting to kind of take a look at, like, you know, if you were a scarlet tanager and this was your diet, right? We'd have some seeds, some berries, and some very cute worms. You're relying on the availability of certain food types, right? And winter, in addition to making things colder, also changes the behavior of plants, for example. So plants might not be reproducing as much, flowering, creating berries, right? So this is going to increase pressure on certain resources. So if you were a scarlet tanager and you needed a certain amount of these foods, let's say there was another bird species that consumed the same type of food, you would be competing with that bird for that food. And I like to think of summer as like this time of abundance for animals, right? It's warm, there's water, there's food on the landscape that they're able to consume. This is why we see animals reproduce this time of year, is because all of the stuff that they need to survive is available. So when winter comes along and changes the pie chart a little bit, we're seeing that berries have gone down a little, but they're still out. We have a wonderful little fruiting tree that the robins have really been enjoying outside the library. So there's berries available. Seeds are more abundant. They're like a dry sort of food that doesn't decompose as fast as like a fresh fruit, for example. So like you might think of like grassland that has dried, you know, the seed heads are poking out of the snow, like that's available for birds. But what really changes is these cute little worms that we were just talking about have a really tough time surviving the winter because their bodies are primarily water. So these moths, these butterflies, beetles, any insect is not going to reproduce this time of year because all of them are going to choose to be dormant instead of out on a beech leaf or, you know, in an egg casing, right? So these changes in invertebrate availability is going to take a toll on the scarlet tanager. So unfortunately, a lot of birds don't have the ability to change their diet in response to the environment. Much like us, I think we struggle with diets as much as they do, but the scarlet tanager is faced with a choice to adapt to the change in food or to make a different trade-off decision. And this is what brings us to the biggest concept of the evening, which is trade-offs. So when an organism chooses to use limited resources for one aspect of survival, ecologists refer to it as a trade-off. So the scarlet tanager could change its diet, but instead, much like a lot of bird species in the area, they choose to use their energy to migrate to areas that do have the food that they consume, like Florida or the tropics, right? So a lot of the birds that we see here in New Hampshire leave, right? I just put together some data today about all of the point counts we've ever done since 2008, and there is a very distinct difference between how many birds we see in the winter and how many birds we see in the summer. It is like 16,000 more birds, right? So something happens, right? The weather snaps and these birds leave. They fly, most of them will fly on the Atlantic Flyway. New Hampshire somewhere in this area. And they will go to warmer climates. So you have warblers that are not here this time of year, cuckoos, your insectivores like a whippoorwill, and even some of the owls like saw-whet owls, which I wanted to mention them because most owls actually do stick around, or some even come to New Hampshire in the winter. But because saw-whet owls are so small, they have such a high surface area, how much body is exposed to the environment at one point in time, so they're going to lose heat really fast, which makes it not advantageous to stick around in a pretty cold area. So yeah, that's one of the reasons for migration. There's multiple complex things, some things we don't even understand fully, but I think it's important to talk about, okay, why aren't these birds here now? So who stuck around? Who figured it out? Who's got the right equipment to make winter work for them? These are the different orders, very fancy Latin words. And so these are the typical groups that you will see in New Hampshire this time of year. So passeriforms, those are your passerines. You've probably heard that word before. They're your small or medium perching birds. And they make up the majority of all bird species overwhelmingly. For example, the chickadee and red crossbill are both examples of passerine birds. Your galliforms, which is one of my favorite orders, which I like to describe as just the chickens of the bird world. You've got spruce grouse up there, ruffed grouse. Back in Wisconsin, we had endangered prairie chickens on the landscape that would stick around in the winter, and you'd see them roosting in the branches, and it made for a really nice photography opportunity. But so those guys have it figured out. Pictiforms, which are your woodpeckers. I'm sure you've all had a fair share on your feeders if you've set them out. They tend to do very well in the winter. And your accipitiforms, which are your hawks, which are less common here than the Midwest, I've noticed, but they are still around. And they have a really great system of relying on roadkill, for example, to survive the winter. So what are some specific adaptations that allow these birds to be better fit for this environment? One of my favorite, very specific adaptations is for the ruffed grouse. And this is a photo of a ruffed grouse foot. And you can see like these little like scales kind of growing off the foot. And what these are actually snowshoes. So these birds grow these snowshoes so that they're increasing their surface area on the snow. And much like our snowshoes, they won't crush through, they won't burn as much energy on the crust, right? We had a gentleman bring in what he thought was a hawk to the center that had hit his window. It was not, it was ruffed grouse. And as I've been kind of working through some of the bird specimens here, I did recently taxidermy this grouse, and this grouse had snowshoes, which was pretty cool. I'll bring it out after the talk so you can take a look, but it is super neat to see like these little appendages that increase that area. Another adaptation that's way more general, and like I think almost every bird species has, is teloerection. So this goldfinch is unusually round right now. Every feather on its body is poofing up. And birds have this really unique ability to control the muscles that direct the angle of their feathers. So we get goosebumps. It's the same thing. It's involuntary though. We can't choose to get goosebumps. Our hairs get raised, right? But we believe that birds can actually make that decision. So in a colder climate, this goldfinch might choose to poof up a little bit more because it creates a layer in between their body and the environment, kind of like a big fluffy winter coat, right? So they have these specialized body feathers, down feathers, that trap warmth and allow them to be warmer even when it's cold outside. So if it's windy, a little rainy, cold, you might see a couple of borbs around. That's what they're called, bird orbs. So very cute, very fluffy, a really important adaptation for birds. So another adaptation you might see in a winter environment is camouflage. There's actually a snowy owl in that photo. It's perfectly camouflaged. If you were a lemming, you would have no idea what's coming. Just all white to you, right? I'm just kidding. There it is. So, but pretty close, right? If that grass wasn't there, you would have a lot more trouble seeing that owl. But this plumage, right, makes it a much more deadly predator on a white landscape. Another adaptation is not something that an individual bird has evolved, but is actually seen across multiple species, which is like huddling and roosting together, using each other to create body warmth and reduce that surface area to the environment. Here in New Hampshire, right now, there could be some chickadees and nuthatches in the same hole together, all kind of cuddling up for the night, which I think is just so sweet. And these tree swallows were pretty cute, so I had to include them. So we've talked a lot about adaptations to the environment. We've talked about birds that aren't here. I know what you're here for, though. It's for the birds that are here. And in lieu of the upcoming Christmas bird count, I wanted to put in this special slide. So there was a study released in 2019 by Rosenberg et al. That was the first study of populations across North America using data all the way back to 1970. And what Rosenberg found was really startling. Overall, all birds have had a 70% population decline since 1970. That is 3 billion birds that have disappeared on the landscape. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? More people are on the landscape. We're building houses, we're creating windows. We are hunting, we are changing the landscape, right? So that's very disturbing to think about. But what I found the most startling was that the evening grosbeak specifically was the bird that has lost the most individuals since 1970. 92% of all evening grosbeaks have disappeared. And this is a bird we have, right? They have range here. They're seen in New Hampshire this time of year. There's a couple observations on the Christmas bird count, but they're vulnerable, right? This population is small. Something happens to their habitat, something happens to their food, and we could lose them. And I wanted to put this slide in because the Christmas bird count gives us a really unique opportunity to estimate exactly how many individuals are on the landscape. So if this whole room went out and we spread across the state of New Hampshire, it's pretty unlikely that we would see the same bird twice. Because we're going out on the same day, same time, we can get a really good estimate of how many evening grosbeaks are left. We can get a good estimate of where they are, right? So the conservation strategy for the species is complex. They don't come to bird feeders. They, habitat for them is old boreal forests. That can't happen in a day, right? They eat budworms, which are incredibly unpredictable in their amounts, right? So some years are really great for grosbeaks, some years are terrible. Same with the cone crop. I'm sure if you heard about the winter finch network, some years, right, just totally all over the map. So it's hard to have a great answer about what to do for these birds. But I think at our level, we can use Saturday as an opportunity to at least get some data about what we're working with, right? So I wanted to put this slide in because I think it's important that you keep your ears and eyes peeled for evening grosbeaks while you're out. I was going to play some of the calls for you. So, right, we have all this wonderful stuff. They're beautiful birds, but they really do sound like a lot of birds. They're not doing themselves any favors here. They are very, I struggle with identifying them, and it is my job to identify birds. So tell me that this isn't like 12 birds you've heard before. Right? That could be a baby chicken. It could be a chickadee, right? So that's their flight call. If they fly over your head, you're probably going to hear that. I think that these calls are what really set them apart, and it reminds me a lot of parrot calls. So I spent a couple weeks in Ecuador. Parrots are so loud; they're always yelling. So every time I heard this call, it kind of reminds me of that like trilly, loud, shrill noise. So if they're cooperating, they'll make that noise, not the D noise. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled, keep your ears peeled. Do your best to census these birds because they really need it. So besides the evening grosbeak, who else are we going to see on the Christmas bird count? And I wanted to give a shout out to one of the most common birds ever, which is the black-capped chickadee. They're everywhere. I had homeschool kids outside today, and we were doing a little mock-up point count, and all we heard was chickadees, right? They're out rain or shine. They are constantly on the bird feeder. We color band them. There's been hundreds that we've banded, which means there's thousands that we haven't banded. So you're gonna see a chickadee unless you have your eyes closed on the Christmas bird count. Another really common one is the mourning dove, who has a special place in my heart because they are so dramatic when you hold them. Mourning doves have this really unique ability to lose a bunch of feathers all at once. So it's kind of like if you had a pillow fight in your hand. Super goofy, beautiful song. Yeah, love those guys. They're great. Another common bird that you'll have trouble not seeing is the blue jay. Abrasive, loud, blue, right? They're everywhere. I was explaining to the kids that blue jays are meanies, and they said, "Oh, I don't like them." And I said, "No, I still like them. You know, they're imitating hawks to scare chickadees off of peanuts. That's cool. I would do that." Okay, this guy's one of my favorites, though. This is a white-breasted nuthatch. Arguably makes the stupidest noise of all birds. If you haven't heard them before, it's like, they crawl up trees, they crawl down trees. They are definitely one of the more common birds you'll see, so keep your eyes on the bark. This guy kind of sucks. So European starlings are doing really well despite their invasive methods of living. But if you're in any crop field, there will certainly be a starling there waiting for you. And while beautiful, they are very problematic. They steal a lot of nesting sites from native birds. They consume massive quantities of human food without permission. And they are one of 3 birds that you can literally pluck out of the wild and have as a pet if you choose. So no protections at all. Their government's practically begging you to catch them. I've seen a couple that are pets that do really cool mimicry of phone alarm. So if you wanted a living one, they got you. And then the American goldfinch, a little less poofy. I tend to hear them flying over more than I see them. So brush up on your flyover calls with the goldfinch. So this is a special man. His name is Shakespeare. You might know him. The reason that European starlings are in the US is because a fanatic of Shakespeare read one of his works that had starlings in it, and this gentleman thought it was a great idea to release some in New York. And 100 years later, we've got a really big problem on our hands. So the next time you read poetry and you feel inspired, just think twice. Okay. Other common species, dark-eyed junco, cutie, love them. There's a couple different subspecies. The only one you'll see here is this slate junco. I had the privilege of having an Oregon subspecies junco in my backyard, and that caused quite the stir on eBird. They had a black head and a gray body, and really beautiful, but not to take away from the slate color junco. Pigeons, another free-for-all bird. You can take them inside, you can race them, you can bet on them. They're everywhere, if you're in an urban environment, you're gonna run into them. And they also like fields. So this little guy's a pine siskin, kind of an unassuming bird. The first time I saw them was in the wilderness of Idaho. So they have a little special story for me, but they're gonna be in kind of the same habitat as American goldfinches, another bird that is constantly flying over you. But they really like conifers and forests, and they won't really be in your open fields or urban environments, but fairly common. These two cuties, which are the downy and hairy woodpecker. When you go to a party and you and your friend have the same outfit on and it's really embarrassing, they have done that for a really long time. I think they just need to chat a little bit because it gets really confusing for us. So how do you tell these two birds apart? One of the things I look for is the beak proportion to the head. So if it looks normal, like it's like, okay, yeah, this makes sense, it's going to be a hairy woodpecker. If it looks really small, like it broke off maybe a while ago, then it might be a downy. Another really adorable bird is the common redpoll, which has this, looks like it's been massacred, but it's just the way it is. These guys love open fields. I've seen flocks of like 300 in a beautiful place where the prairie chickens were in Wisconsin. They just look like little strawberries in the snow. So keep your eyes peeled for those as well. And there's a lot of birds that you can see quite commonly. Oh my gosh. Wild turkeys, mallards, ravens, house sparrows, tufted titmice, northern cardinals, crows, red-breasted nuthatches, snow buntings, evening grosbeaks, that's a male, golden crown kinglets, cedar waxwings, and American robins. So all of these cuties are common enough to have clip art made of them, which means that you will run into them in the wild. So another thing I wanted to talk about is the issue, UH, which is unidentified hawk in the data set. It's really unacceptable how many there are. So I wanted to give you a chance to fix it by showing you all the birds you might run into that will be flying over you. So we'll start with the hardest, which is the Coopers versus sharp-shinned hawk, something I even struggle with. Both of them are pretty uncommon. Like you'll have to be in the right place at the right time to see this bird. But if you do, I really want you to take a second to kind of look at their elbows. So Cooper's hawks have this really nice, like sharp bend in their wing versus the Sharpie, which has a more flat edge to their wing. So if you are given the opportunity to look at a bird flying over you perfectly at ideally 10 feet, you'll hopefully be looking at those elbows to figure out who it is. Here's another accipiter form, which is the red-tailed hawk. This is going to blow your mind. It has a red tail. Keep an eye out for those tails. This is not a hawk. This is a barred owl. But it could look like a hawk if you squinted really hard. And they have these like bars on their wings, right? So let's compare it to a sharp-shinned hawk. Not only is a barred owl much larger, but the barring kind of goes like, I think, more into the wing than it does here. Owls also have this really cool adaptation, which is a flat face, a disc face that allows them to hear prey. So if it flies over and it looks like it hit a wall at one point, then it might be a barred owl. If it flies over, it has a normal bird head, then it's probably a hawk. This one is a northern harrier, which you're only going to see if you're in a wetland district. Northern harriers are really cool. They are a species of concern because they need 300 acres of unaffected wetland to breed, to have one nest. So if you see one, count yourself lucky, you know, like there's land out there for this bird to breed on. But if you're in a wetland, keep an eye out for those little black wingtips. They have a white stripe above their tail if you get a view from the back, but really cool birds. And then Sarah's favorite bird, the turkey vulture, which is very uncommon. Actually, I learned while putting this together that they migrate away. I kind of imagined that they'd stay around, but if you do see a bird with no barring, black body, little pink head, then you know it's a turkey vulture. Another thing I wanted to discuss is all of our shared excitement about rare birds. And I wanted to crush your dreams under my foot because if you see a golden eagle, it's probably a baby bald eagle. I'm really sorry. I want to say it's a golden eagle too, right? They look so similar. I mean, don't they both have the yellow bill and feet? Yeah, but they're just so uncommon in the area, and I really don't want to see it without some evidence. So if you're seeing a bird and you're so excited and you're clapping your hands, you're jumping up and down, it's a golden eagle, just make sure that the white on the tail is really clean, right? So golden eagles, very minimalist. They have this black band. It's all pretty contained. Baby bald eagles, it kind of look like they had a splatter painting day on their tail. There's like a lot of modeling with brown. Another thing to look for, which may be even easier to see if you're far away, is the white on the wings. So golden eagles only have white in their primaries and secondaries. The juvenile bald eagles will have white in their coverts. So if their armpits are white, then you know it's not as exciting as you thought it would be. And then we all know what an adult bald eagle looks like. And we all have seen a turkey vulture, but I think it's important to note that while similar, I don't want you to get too excited, have too much fun. So just keep your eyes peeled for that amount of white. So on the topic of more fun birds to see, what are some more uncommon species? These are certainly less numerous than the black-capped chickadee. We have common grackles, the menaces of a Texas parking lot. Brown creepers, which are very cute and very quiet, so you'll have to listen for that really subtle peep, and keep your eyes peeled for a little brown guy on a tree. Yellow-rumped warblers, there's been like 10 observations in 36 years, so if you get really lucky, you might see one. They're also called butterbutts, so just keep your eyes peeled for that. Buttery butt. Chipping sparrows, I haven't picked up one in months, so possible, but pretty unlikely. Purple finches, which birders abbreviate to poofy, which I really appreciate. They are common flyover birds, so if you hear like a tick, 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 you can count on it being a poofy. And the humble caffeine bird, the winter wren, very small, very cute, very misleading name. They are mostly out of here by now, but a couple have been seen. What you've all been waiting for. What are the rare species? What is like seen like 3 times in 36 years? Belted kingfishers, actually pretty common in the warmer weather, but once the water freezes over, they're gonna have a tough time getting fish. Yellow-bellied sapsuckers, which were everywhere this summer. I think the last one I picked up was about a month ago. Northern shrike, which Allie and I were just talking about how someone saw a shrike last year and everyone went to that person's spot instead of their survey area. Very rare, but once again, a really cool bird. Carolina wrens, if they're really lost, they might be here. I certainly would be in the Carolinas right now. Hermit thrush, another bird that was everywhere this summer. I haven't heard hermit thrush in quite a while. So they've had a couple observations this time of year. And song sparrows, which stuck around in Klein for quite a while, but have left. And then finally, my last category is birds that were not seen in last year's census, but are possible. So Bohemian waxwings, which look a lot like a cedar waxwing, but have this really cool, like rusty butt. They also don't have any yellow on their breast feathers. They're like more of like a gray bird. That is another bird that showed up in my backyard and caused quite a stir. I was really excited to pick that one up. Pileated woodpeckers, which I did see this week. So I don't know if they're just not around or people aren't listening for Woody the woodpecker, but they're out there. Red-bellied woodpeckers. I haven't heard actually maybe 5 or 6 my whole time in New Hampshire, and there's 20 in my backyard back home. So might run into them, might not. A bird I haven't seen before, a white-winged crossbill, which is another species that's eruptive, so they're unpredictable. They move according to where the food is. Unfortunately, the prediction for this year is that the food is not so great, so it's going to be kind of unlikely to see them. Another bird I haven't seen, a pine grosbeak, moves with the food as well, but if you see any birds that are kind of pink purple, they sound really weird, you haven't heard them before, and they have any white wing bars, you can go ahead and call me and I will be there in 5 minutes. And then boreal chickadees, which will be at elevations 2,500 feet and above. I have not seen those either, and I would love to. So you're prepared for the Christmas bird count. You've reviewed your birds. You're excited to go out there and find a golden eagle. And I just wanted to offer some resources. I printed off some little pages back there with every bird species that's been seen in the last 3 years on the Christmas bird count, as well as some of the species comparisons that are kind of tough. I also wrote those down so you can take a chance to review them. With my final slide, I wanted to promote myself. So I've revitalized the Bird Society. I'm sure most of you have been getting my emails. Our next event besides tonight is on Wednesday, December 18th at 6 p.m. We're going to have a little watercolor workshop with provided supplies and pre-sketched birds. It is a lot of fun. 2 people from the last workshop told me that I reinvigorated their love for art, which is a high honor. Totally chill, fee-free, and just a good time. So please stop by if you are interested, and if you have any questions, want to be added to the Bird Society list, or want to complain about my terrible jokes, please send me an email at residentbird@tinmountain.org. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
So what areas are the bird counts being conducted in? What towns?
Point counts or Christmas bird count?
Christmas, well, the one that you're doing on Saturday.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of little like circles. Allie and I will be leading circle 4, which is gosh, it is really not near any landmarks to describe where it is. We have some on West Side Road. We're right above the Kangamangus, and then it's just like this little slice of the pie that we're in charge of. So the Christmas bird count itself has, I think, like 25 circles in the state of New Hampshire, and if you broaden that scale to national scale, I mean, it's going to be thousands.
Do it in their own backyard.
Mm-hmm.
with their own food.
So,
Oh.
yeah, if you're, so every data that we gather is taken with a grain of salt, right? But we're pretty sure that chickadee didn't fly 5 miles to where Allie and I were, so we can say it's a different bird. And that's true for all observations, right? I keep having this one color banded chickadee trick me into thinking it's a new one. I have its combo memorized in my head because I've seen it so many times. So unless we can color band every bird that's out there, we can't be certain that it's all unique individuals, but we do our best.
And that is, sorry, just to add, that's why we're coordinating with folks, right? So if you want to kind of your backyard, the person that's in charge of that area is gonna kind of avoid your backyard. Not that
Right.
you're in your Backyard anyway. We have people outside. But we're trying our best to not double count. Again, like Emily said, you can't be ever perfectly certain, but sort of a lot of the behind the scenes that goes on is like, if you say you're gonna do this certain road, then no, we're not sending other people there. Other people are working in groups, and so we're trying to cover the rest, but again, because it's a large area that centers around, I guess, Conway, North Conway is sort of the center.
Yeah.
of that ditch. And we can send you the email with the circle too, so you know. Then that allows us to divvy up the regions and make sure we're getting good coverage, but also not sending a bunch of people that are, oh, you went there at 10 a.m., you went there at 4 p.m., and now we've gotten double counted.
Right.
No, it looks like sometime, like Madison's not listening. Is there one of that circle now? That's what. The circle's more. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I can look.
Oh, yeah, I'm right down here to see, and Norm said there's been years where people do that, they'll ski a hill and they'll look for her, and so.
Oh.
Okay, that's not to you too.
Okay.
Do they do it all day or just, don't you want it all day? Well, some people do.
It's as much as or little as you want.
Mm-hmm.
So the most important thing is going to be, recording your effort. So if you have walked around your yard for an hour, or if you have been out for 8 hours, you need to record that, because that is, it helps somewhat standardize, oh, you found it, good job.
So here's our area,
That's-
Crawford Notch. Mm-hmm.
But if you want to zoom out to show the extent of the whole thing, so we're kind of in Bartlett area, and then, whoever has the papers can see whoever sees it, in Norris doing the area along.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're interested in working in a certain area, you contact that coordinator. And it's like, you just come out with us, if you want to go to group, or here's an area that you can see. Or, yeah, if you just want to see your feeder, we'll also take that information, and we won't send it to you.
There's a lot of people come around that day.
Your backyard might be nicer than my backyard.
Ooh.
So bad.
Any other questions about Christmas bird count? Birds you might see?
I have a, I was just curious, it seems like I'm hearing more about the snowy owls. You think there's more migrating?
Yeah, that totally could be the case. So owls are also eruptive birds, but they do the kind of opposite of what birds do, or grosbeaks do, where they leave if there's not enough food. They don't go to the food. So if there's not enough lemmings in Canada, Alaska, etc., they will actually migrate south. So maybe the lemmings are having a terrible year, and that's why we're seeing more owls. And you had a question too?
Well, I was just gonna say, back in the 80s, there were hundreds, thousands of evening roasting. And it was because of the spruce bud one up in Maine,
Mm-hmm.
all spruce, but they say that they're about to have another.
Oh, that's exciting.
They're really worried about it, yeah.
Well, it's bad for spruce,
So
but great for
that's what we
grosbeaks.
get. But
Yeah,
if they're down, the population is down by 50%, it'll never be like it was back in the 80s.
exactly. Yeah, totally. Well, that's exciting. Hopefully you'll go see it.
And rose breasted grosbeak, you didn't say that, and I didn't see those.
This time of year?
I think so. No? Late spring maybe?
Yeah.
Late winter, early spring? So you.
Yeah. Yeah,
The snow's still on the ground.
right.
I know I get my feet, you know, my skin.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming to my talk. You were a wonderful audience. I hope you all get home safe. And if you come up with any other questions, like I said, you can email me anytime and I will happily step away from whatever I'm doing to answer your emails. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you for coming.
And again, there's the